Chapter 3 of Because of Winn Dixie. I started in on Winn Dixie right away, trying to clean him up. First I gave him a bath. I used the garden hose and some baby shampoo. He stood still for it, but I could tell he didn't like it. He looked insulted, and the whole time he didn't show me his teeth or wag his tail once. After he was all washed and dried, I brushed him good. I used my own hairbrush and worked real hard at all the knots and patches of fur stuck together. He didn't mind being brushed. He wiggled his back like it felt pretty good. The whole time I was working on him, I was talking to him, and he listened. I told him how we were alike. See, I said, you don't have any family, and neither do I. I've got the preacher, of course, but I don't have a mama. I have one, but I don't know where she is. She left when I was 3 years old. I can't hardly remember her. And I bet you don't remember your mama much either, so we're almost like orphans. Winn Dixie looked straight at me when I said that to him, like he was feeling relieved to finally have somebody understand his situation. I nodded my head at him and went on talking. I don't even have any friends because I had to leave them all behind when we moved here from Whatley. Whatley's up in North Florida. Have you ever been to North Florida? ? Winn Dixie looked down at the ground like he was trying to remember if he had. You know what I said? Ever since we moved here, I've been thinking about my mama extra hard. More than I ever did when I was in Whatley. Winn Dixie twitched his ears and raised his eyebrows. I think the preacher thinks about my mama all the time, too. He's still in love with her. I know that because I heard the ladies at the church in Whatley talking about him. They said he's still hoping she'll come back, but he doesn't tell me that. He won't talk to me about her at all. I want to know more about her, but I'm afraid to ask the preacher. I'm afraid he'll get mad at me. Winn Dixie looked at me hard, like he was trying to say something. What? I said. He stared at me. Oops. You think I should make the preacher tell me about her? Winn Dixie looked at me so hard he sneezed. I'll think about it, I said. When I was done working on him, Winn Dixie looked a whole lot better. He still had his bald spots, but the fur that he did have cleaned up nice. It was all shiny and soft. You could still see his ribs, but I intended to feed him good, and that would take care of that. I couldn't do anything about his crooked yellow teeth because he got into a sneezing fit every time I started brushing them with my toothbrush, and I finally had to give up. Oh no, she used her toothbrush. But for the most part, he looked a whole lot better. And so I took him into the trailer and showed him to the preacher. Daddy, I said. He said. He was working on a sermon and kind of muttering to himself. Daddy, I wanted to show you the new Winn Dixie. The preacher put down his pencil and rubbed his nose, and finally he looked up. Well, he said, smiling real big at Winn Dixie. Well now, don't you look handsome? Winn Dixie smiled back at the preacher. He went over and put his head in the preacher's lap. He smells nice too, said the preacher. He rubbed Winn Dixie's head and looked into his eyes. Daddy, I said real quick before I lost all my nerve. I've been talking to Winn Dixie. Is that right? The preacher said. He scratched Winn Dixie's head. I've been talking to him and he agreed with me that since I'm 10 years old, you should tell me 10 things about my mama. Just 10 things. That's all. The preacher stopped rubbing Winn Dixie's head and held real still. I could see him thinking about pulling his head back into his shell. 1 thing for each year I've been alive, I told him. Please. Winn Dixie looked up at the preacher and kind of gave him a nudge with his nose. The preacher sighed. He said to Winn Dixie, I should have guessed you were going to be trouble. Then he looked at me. Come on, Opal, he said. Sit down, and I will tell you 10 things about your mama. Oh boy, next time we'll learn things about her mama.